Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our AFP Miami National Philanthropy Day Nominations 101 webinar. It's focused on how to submit a winning nomination, and we'll be going over what reviewers look for, how to create strong letters of support, including storytelling that stands out, and common mistakes to avoid. So I am Julie Angulo, the Director of Development at Scholar Match, where we provide first generation students with low income backgrounds with scholarships and mentorship. I am joined by my AFP Miami board members, well, Sarah Reilly from Branches. Their mission is to partner with families to build educational and financial assets, community, and hope. We are unfortunately not able to be joined by Christy Scott today from Chapman Partnership. She is undergoing a family emergency. So it's just going to be Sarah and myself. So we can move ahead to the next slide, please. So welcome once again. We're taking a peek behind the curtain. So for those of you who may not be familiar with NPD Day, that is our premier celebration of philanthropy that brings together South Florida's most influential changemakers like you and me for an inspiring and impactful event. That's the day where we gather honorees and we, of course, honor them. And so part of that is submitting a nomination for those folks. So we wanted to go over what that would look like. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to go through it, piece by piece. So next slide. The question is, why would you even nominate someone for this type of, this event through these awards? Is, well, it provides people with recognition, appreciation, inspiration for others. It highlights diverse impact, it strengthens partnerships, and it advocates for our profession. So really a great way for us to come together on this special occasion. But you're probably wondering, what are we nominating them for? So on the next slide, we're going to go over the categories. So a couple decisions that need to be made. You can nominate in more than one category, clearly, but definitely wanted to go over those briefly so you have a better sense of what's involved. So we can do outstanding philanthropist, grant maker, youth, fundraising professional. That's a new one. James McLemore, Outstanding Volunteer, and the Julia Tuttle Award for Community Involvement in Corporate Citizenship. So there is an application packet that outlines the criteria for each one of those, and you just have to be careful to adhere to those because, for example, one of them, like the Julia Tuttle, you have to be a member of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. So you just want to make sure that you can meet those criteria. The person that you're nominating is meeting those criteria before you go all out on the process of filling out that nominations packet. All right, so next slide, please. So why do these nominations matter? Well, we went over in one of the slides, beforehand, where, it's more of a strategic thing to a certain degree, but it's also a really nice way to pay homage to someone that you have been working with. Well, not pay homage, but pay respects to someone that you're working with and making sure that they know that you appreciate, all the impact that they have on the community. So this just, as we were creating this process reminded me of since I'm Gen X, obviously, it just reminded me of these cartoon characters that I used to read about in this magazine called Highlights, and the two brothers, who I thought were twins, but clearly, according to Wikipedia, they're not. They're just kind of, polar opposites. So one is called Goofus, and the other one's called Gallant. And so as we go through the do's and don'ts, it just reminded me of these two characters. So Goofus would treat these nominations, nonchalantly, like, if I slap it on the paper, people will understand that this person that I'm nominating or this organization deserves the award. However, Gallon, who's a goody two-shoes, would respect the competitive nature of our MPD process, would make sure to understand the guidelines, and know that the storytelling that's involved would, shine only after that eligibility criteria is met. So making sure that you can meet those criteria and then taking the time to fill out that application. So keeping in mind that this is our signature event and we're going to do it right. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we're going to kick it over to Sarah so that we can learn a little bit more about how to understand the NPD guidelines.
Absolutely. So thank you, Julie, and hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. I just wanted to share too. So this really is such a phenomenal opportunity to steward some of your donors and supporters who have been there for you, for your organization, but also for our broader community. Just sharing a personal testimony, we've had a chance to nominate one or two of Branch's personal supporters over the years, and the feedback that we've gotten has been phenomenal. A lot of times our donors don't necessarily want this recognition, but maybe they're surprised and shocked that we see them in this light, and it gives them that opportunity to really just feel appreciated and loved for all that they do, and also amongst a community of other supporters and philanthropists here in Miami. So please do take advantage of this. It's such a great day full of just love for our donors, love for our nonprofits. And it's a really awesome opportunity. So that's why we're getting this out here early for you and making sure that you're prepared so that your donor can get the spotlight and really be awarded and celebrated in the way they should be. So, guidelines for this year, we are going to I'm going to share really quickly. We are going to, let me pull it up here, share this document with you after the webinar. So, come Friday, February 27th, this is when our nominations are going to go live for you all. So, you'll have the opportunity to submit. And you'll be shared this specific nominations packet that goes through all our eligibility criteria. So, first and foremost, the biggest really criteria that is important is that your nominee must be available on November 6th, the day of National Philanthropy Day. We can't award your nominee if they're not able to show up and be there in person. That's a big part of this. We want them to get the full experience. We want your organization to get the full highlights. So with that being said, they must be available on that date. It's November 6th. It's going to be here in Miami at Jungle Island. It's at 11 a.m. So just make sure before you think they're nominating somebody, make sure you know their schedule and that they're available that day. Secondly, we're not able to award any posthumous nominations. So we will not accept those. Also, it is very critical for you to note that if you are an AFP member, special consideration will be given for your nomination. So if you aren't an AFP member, this is a great chance for you to sign up, join us. We have a really, really great team of people who are here to support you as fellow fundraisers. There's so many great resources, access to great conferences, as well as a community of other fundraisers who you can lean on for guidance and support. So just keep that in mind. Um, it's also really important to note that a complete nominations packet consists of a nomination form, which is gonna look like this. And we also have a Google form, so you can either fill this out by hand and submit it via PDF, via email to Reilly Ruiz, or you can fill out our Google form, so we have that for you as well. And it also needs to include the narrative. So that is where you'll do all the talking about your nominee and how great they are, and make sure that you're highlighting all the great things about them that make them qualified for that award. Other things to note, no resumes or attachments. If you just submit a resume and no narrative, we're not going to consider those nominations. So make sure that you're paying attention to what specific award you're nominating them for, and really crafting a narrative and telling that story to make it make sense. So I'm going to take us back to our PowerPoint. All right. So what to submit? So this is going to be obviously the form I just mentioned, the attachments, which includes the letter, but also please include pictures. If you have any pictures, those are always great. Letters of support are also highly encouraged and really make an application stand out. And again, you'll submit that either via the Google form that we'll have sent to you and give access to you to, or via email to Reilly. Alrighty, I'm going to keep us going. So, in terms of required content, so accomplishments, we really want to see the time, talent, and treasure that your honoree has helped commit to whatever, either your organization personally or also other organizations throughout the community. Any sort of awards that they've been given, This is where we want to see bullet points, right? Of what are their accomplishments, what have they succeeded at, what really makes them stand out amongst. We have so many amazing philanthropists here in Miami, but what makes them stand out for that particular award? And then another big thing to highlight is sometimes we get nominations, right? And it's just focused on your particular organization and how the donor has made an impact for your organization. It's critical that you actually highlight how they've made an impact on the whole community. So, what have they done for other nonprofits? Do they serve on other boards? Do they really get involved with other philanthropic events and galas in town and help promote the act of giving and really serve as a role model to other philanthropists in the community or other grant makers, corporations, depending on your category. So make sure that you're highlighting not just the impact on your own nonprofit, but the impact on the broader Miami community. Alrighty, I'm taking us to the next slide. So, what the committee is looking for. So, our nominations committee really consists of, we have some of our AFP board members that serve on the committee, our National Philanthropy Day co-chairs, Maite and Pietro. They are also serving on the nominations committee and reviewing all these nominations that they come in as they come in. Really, what we're hoping for is clarity and conciseness. So the narrative form, we say specifically in our guidelines, it does not need to exceed more than 2 pages. We're not looking for a book to read on your nominee, but we are looking for the clear impact that they made and how this philanthropist, this organization has made a difference for your nonprofit and for the broader Miami community. Again, specific impact. We also want to make sure that the award is in alignment with this particular nominee. So, what does that mean? If you're nominating a grant maker, we really want that foundation not to just be a partner with you through in-kind support. We want to make sure that they're philanthropically supporting you with dollars. So, anytime you can go back and refer again to our nominations packet. You'll see in the earlier pages that we list out the specific categories for each award, what we're looking for in each of them. And then if you're curious, you can also see examples of the past awardees in this packet. So this is going to be a great resource for you to go back to and reference so you can see really who fits the criteria we're looking for. All right. And then again, a human-centered narrative. So obviously, we are celebrating people and the people who make this city and this community a great place to live and thrive and is continuing to make it better. So really, anytime you can really center the narrative on the human impact and the true, love that this individual or organization or grant maker has made to your organization and the community, that's just going to make it stand out and shine. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving forward. So the anatomy of a winning nomination. And Julie, stop me at any time if you want to jump in here at any point. Okay. So of course, a strong opening. This is some of your basic writing 101 things that we're going to go through now. So we really want to make sure that you open up strong. Can you give me 1 or 2 sentences? What's your elevator pitch for why this nominee really has made a huge difference? How long have they been involved with the organization? Have they given a certain amount? What's their total giving that they've given to your organization? Have they really stood out by being a board member? Just make sure that in your strong opening, you're clearly saying in 1 to 2 sentences, hey, my nominee deserves this award because of X, Y, or Z. Again, it's helpful if you give us a brief intro or description of the nominee. We may not know this person, we may not have any clue, and actually, that's a great opportunity for us to shine a light on somebody who's making a difference that maybe the broader community isn't fully aware of. And again, that impact on your organization. So again, we go back to that time, talent, and treasure. So what are they giving to your organization specifically? And can you name it? Can you give us a dollars amount? Can you give us the number of hours they've served at a volunteer project or the advice and expertise they'd have helped give to your organization or others on a board or on a special committee or on a strategy session of sorts. So any sort of specifics in terms of impact will make a huge, huge difference. And again, once again, we're also emphasizing that it can't just be your organization, it's also their impact on others and the broader community. and their reach throughout Miami. So, are they involved with the Chamber of Commerce and have they made a difference there? Are they involved with of another volunteer organization like the Junior League, or have they helped serve on a foundation committee of sorts that helps organize Give Miami Day or something like that? Anything that kind of helps shine the light on the fact that they're not just getting involved with your organization only, they're caring about our community and really playing a strategic role in making Miami a better place for everyone to live. Okie dokie. All righty. So, Julie, I'm going to turn it over to you now to give some examples.
Yes, those that thank you for laying the foundation. That was really, really good to understand what it takes to have a winning nomination. But just in case, for those of you that are here today, we can give you some actual real examples of some winners, or at least ones that were highly ranked. And just to give a little bit more context, I have been a reviewer for the NPD nominations for the past 3 years. This will be my fourth year. And I tend to be considered like the Simon Cowell of reviewers. I don't only review here, I review for the Miami Foundation, I review for Children's Trust, and other organizations that I'm not going to go into. I really enjoy doing this, but I also like to provide feedback, which is why I did not hesitate to raise my hand to say, I'll do this webinar. So similar to what Sarah said, it's kind of like writing 101. And I like to think in threes or fives. It's really helpful to, kind of level set what is expected. And so similar to, basic English 101, you want to make sure that you're kind of creating this 5 paragraph type, nomination. And so when I was looking at those winning nominations, I was trying to detect some patterns that I could share with you. So I numbered them so that they're easy for us to spot. I'm not going to read through the nominations, but I will kind of highlight where these aspects are. So the first thing is like Sarah said, establish some sort of background or history so we understand. That does include the elevator pitch and who or what this nominee is. Then the rationale for why they were selected to be part of this nomination cycle, providing evidence of their impact on the community with other partners other than yourself. So you don't want to make it one-sided. You want to make sure that you're showing how they have impact across the board. You bring it back to the relationship that you have with that nominee to, because that is important to show that personal relationship. And then obviously emphasizing that they would be available to be part of the event on November 6th and that there are other community partners that would show up for them, So those are the 5 things that I kind of clued in on. In this particular nomination, there were not one, but 2 letters of support. So taking that time to make sure that you have additional people that are reinforcing what you're saying is to me like a really important signal. So giving you an example on the next slide is this was the Miami Foundation that nominated the Frederick A. DeLuca Foundation back in 2023, and they were the winners for this category. You can see that they introduced the DeLuca Foundation, provided a little bit of history, why they were established, and then went into the reasons why they should be considered for this award. And the bullets really help. When you're reading a lot of applications and they're all just paragraph after paragraph, it's good to break it up a little bit like this. So this is one of the ones that stood out for me. On the next slide, we have the other 3 components, which is where the Miami Foundation is highlighting how the DeLuca Foundation's impact across Miami-Dade County is through these organizations, such as YWCA, Mexican American Council, and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Miami. So really, really seeing their impact there. And then in the next paragraph, which is number 4, they bring it back to how the DeLuca Foundation has impacted Miami Foundation. So even though we like to see the numbers, like it would have been nice to see the amount of that grant. For those of us that are in this nonprofit space, we kind of know that it's a very large gift and that it's a 6-year grant. So this one we could, give it a pass. But you can see all the other elements are there. And then in the fifth section, it does talk about how a lot of the other other partners would show up to support the DeLuca Foundation. So I hope that gives you a better grasp of what it takes to submit a winning grant maker nomination. Any questions? All right. So we can go ahead and give you another example because that was an organization, so you can see how that's presented. And now we're going to do an individual. So the Outstanding Philanthropist nomination. I wanted to pick something that was very similar to the structure as before. So same bullet points, same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can go ahead and show you what that looks like. So this was for Flavia Lizzo, who is part of Jackson Health Foundation. So they launched straight into who she is. Then they talked about, what the reasons for nominating her, and then her achievements at the foundation. In the next slide, it talks about her activity outside of the foundation and in the community. So that's showing her impact in things that are outside of her day-to-day professional life. And it's still very related to community impact. And then the last portion, there was actually a larger list of organizations that would show up if she won. I just truncated it here for the reasons of space, but it was a much, much longer list, just showing how much support she and the foundation have in this community. So very, very impressive. And of course, she won that year. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to kick it over to Sarah for storytelling that stands out.
All righty. So obviously in any of these nominations, Julia is such a great example of somebody who truly reviews tons of nominations for various different awards. And when you're getting so many different nominations, it's so clear the ones where a donor has truly made an impact, and it's clear to us because of strong storytelling. So anytime you can start out your nominations with a true narrative that tells a story about how this individual or this organization has truly partnered with your organization and made an impact, and make it specific. So give us the time and place. Were they showing up for you during COVID and helping hand out meals to people that were lined up around the block? Were they the first to call you up and say, "Hey, I heard you're doing strategic planning. How can I serve on your strategic planning advisory committee? How can I help give you all feedback as you move forward into this capital campaign?" Give us specifics and really tell us the story of how this person has made a difference. Um, or this organization. The other thing that's really critical here is it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge story. Mini stories and clear, specific moments where this person or organization has really made a difference for you or for their community. Those mini stories and experiences, whether it is that one time they called you when you really needed some advice and they were there for you, or that one time where you had a gap in your funding and they helped close that gap and it met critical needs for your organization and the community. Anytime that you have smaller stories that you can share, it doesn't have to be some big, long out, drawn out 3-year relationship you've had with this person or organization. It could be one specific moment that you can tell a story about, and it's specific, and it really just shines a light on how they are making an impact for your organization or for the community. And again, when you're storytelling, really think about that before and after. So, before, let's say at the beginning of COVID, right, when COVID first hit and your organization didn't know how it was going to respond, talk about how stressful that was. Paint the picture of like what kind of challenge it was for your organization, and then the after of how this donor, this philanthropist, this organization, this company came in and said, "Hey, I'm here to help." Specifically did X, Y, or Z thing to help your organization. And then what was the impact afterwards? How many people did you all reach because of this donation? How many volunteers were you able to engage? How much did your brand visibility raise in the community because of this particular donation or this particular kind of support? So really paint that before and after. And you'll also find that if you're doing this storytelling well, your nomination will be done before you know it. If you can think of a really strong story, right, and you can make that the focus point, then a lot of the other things that you're talking about really are just those bullet points that Julie was mentioning earlier, those accomplishments that, yes, we want to highlight, but you don't maybe need to spend all your time on that. If you tell your story well and you give real numbers, like we're talking about with meaning, about the impact of how many people you're reaching, or what did this do for students, or what did this do for families, or did you help give art access to X number of schools because of this amazing grant that you got from a foundation? Any sort of specifics with that will really help paint us a full picture of the nominee and who they are as a philanthropist or grant making organization in the community. Okay. So then I'm going to toss it back over to Julie, who's then going to really point out for you the anatomy of a great story.
Yeah. And I also thank you, Sarah. And I also wanted to point out that the story doesn't have to be so woven into the actual narrative. It could, but in the interest of space, you could also make sure that it's part of one of your supporting letters. So if you know someone that has a good story, or you can help them, coach them on which story that they should highlight, that's okay too. So that's another reason I didn't actually include it in the narrative, because you can always have it interwoven, but it can also be a little bit more separate. So either one is fine. So giving you anatomy of an outstanding story, it's about the nominee, highlights the community need, that action that Sarah was talking about, which is, what did that money go towards? What did they do that translated into maybe a fundraiser or whatnot? The impact that they had, and then why you were choosing to recognize this nominee now. So in the next slide, we have an example of an outstanding story. And this is actually an application, but this is a very good a good example of how the application told a story throughout. A little bit different from the structure that we saw earlier, right? So there you have the introduction well, actually they the first thing that they did was make reference to the category that they were nominating. So that was pretty clever. I like that. Then they introduced who they are, which is the Dolphins Cancer Challenge, and what they wanted to who they were nominating, and then they were talking a little bit about the story, the need that was happening, and then later on, the actual action that happened based on that community need, which had to do with the pandemic and their response to it. On the next slide, we have more examples of the actual impact. So, and that's why the use of the bold, the underlining, I love that because it really breaks things apart. Um, I will say that this one didn't win, but this is one of my favorite applications ever. Um, so just goes to show that you can put something together, and then there's still sometimes, for different reasons, but still this was one of my standouts. And then it ends with, why this nominee deserves recognition. And it ends with the legacy of Julia Tuttle, which is that nomination category. So very, very clever. And after I read it, I was really pleasantly surprised to know that it was someone that I was already very connected to. So, so a very nice preferred story for me. So yeah, so that gives you a good example of a different type of application that you could still weave a story throughout. Next one is supporting letters. So supporting letters, we're going into that about it provides unique perspectives, those anecdotes that we were talking about, and validation that goes outside of what you're saying in your nomination. So in the next slide, we have an example of a letter. And it's tied back to the previous application that we just went through. You can see that it was a rather long letter, but again, the use of bullets and highlights and bolds, it really pulls the eye, and it shows that there's a lot of thought that went into the creation of these supporting letters. So I didn't break it down further on this, but I just really wanted to give you an example of, what a really impressive supporting letter looks like. And so the next slide.
And just
Oh,
Julie, before
yeah.
we go into the next slide, I just wanted to add for folks that I know when we're doing these, right, putting my nonprofit hat on, right, many of us are development professionals and we're wearing many hats and we've got full plates. So the idea of asking for supporting letters on top of already having to put together a nominations packet and application can feel overwhelming sometimes. But I think it's really critical that we also think about the stewardship piece and the partnership piece that comes into these supporting letters. So think about, for instance, if you have an outstanding grant maker that you want to nominate, how powerful is it if you ask a peer organization who's also funded by this grant maker, hey, would you be willing to write a supporting letter? And then they can also share, or you can share to this grant maker, hey, I had this peer who really, the reason you won this award is partly because you have multiple organizations here that really care about the fact that you're making such a big difference for them and their organization and the people that they serve or the participants that they serve. So I really think there's a lot of power in that. And just when you're thinking about making it as easy as possible for the people who are submitting these supporting letters, feel free to give them a bullet point list of, hey, could you write a quick letter and include X, Y, and Z things that make this nominee really stand out? I know you already probably agree with me on X, Y, or Z bullet points. Maybe you also have a specific story that you know about that you could ask them to talk about in their supporting letter, like Julie mentioned. But I think making it as clear as possible. We also have the beauty of AI these days that can really help put together a fantastic supporting letter, and that somebody can help personalize and customize, but doesn't have to spend hours upon hours looking at and reading. So just think about, I would really highly suggest, Julie and I both know from going through this process, the supporting letters have really made a difference between, they have made or break, they have really made the difference into whether somebody has won the nomination or not, because you do get additional points if you have a supporting letter. So just please do keep in mind that that can really make a difference. Okay, thank you, Julie.
You're welcome. You can take on the common mistakes.
Alrighty, so this is the basics, but we just wanted to highlight it here because you would be shocked how many people do make these common mistakes. Number one is if they're missing any sort of requirements. We have had, and I actually will raise my hand because I don't mind being somebody admitting that I made a common mistake. Branches had a donor that actually we nominated who was not available on National Philanthropy Day. So please do, when you're thinking about these nominations, make sure that they would be available that day. Otherwise, unfortunately, they get passed off and they won't be able to win. So that's a very common requirement that ends up being missed. If you don't, sometimes people just submit a form and then send in a resume and they don't even give us a narrative. That has often happened a lot. Or they really haven't been specific enough about which award the nominee qualifies for and why they specifically qualify for that award. So any sort of vagueness is just not helpful. It's okay if you submit a shorter application, but it's powerful, clear, and concise. It's not okay if you give us a giant storybook full of information, but it's all very vague and not clear about what the impact that the nominee has made. And then again, late references. So sometimes we've had people try to submit late. Just to give you all context, last year we had 42 applications for the various awards. So if somebody's coming in late, we already have a lot of nominees that we have to review. So please don't be late. We're trying to give you all ample amounts of time to submit this. You'll have about 2 months to submit the applications, which is huge. So if you get on this now, you take advantage of this webinar, things will work out great. But if you're late, we really can't make exceptions for that. So sorry. Okay, and on to our next slide. Extra credit, again, this is something Julie highlighted earlier, but AFP members receive an extra point and extra credit for submitting a nomination. So if you are not a member, again, please visit this link. We'll also drop it in the chat. But please, please, please consider becoming a member of AFP Miami. It is so worth your time and resources. I know Julie and I personally benefit greatly from it. It's just such a great community. There's so many great opportunities, and it's also a benefit to your organization. So again, if you have to go back and justify your budget, right, to your CEO or to your ED, note that you're also helping steward your donors. If you get an extra point in the nominations process, and does that mean you're able to steward your donors and appreciate them even more at events like National Philanthropy Day because you're an AFP member? So please just keep that in mind, and we'll make sure you have access to become a member if you are not one already. All righty. And then I think we're now moving into the very end. So we have time for some Q&A and takeaways. Julie, is there anything you want to add?
No, I mean we're going to be able to share the checklist in the next slide, but maybe we want to field a couple of questions beforehand just in case. And yeah, we'll take it from there. Are there any questions?
I guess I have a question, having submitted and having had honorees selected and non-selected, and also serving on the committee before. Um, and I know you went over this, but can you share a little bit more about the quality of the letter? Because if I remember correctly, of course, you shared two beautiful examples of a quality letter. And does that letter get rated on a scale for the quality of it? Just because I want to make sure that we're submitting with the best letters of support.
You mean on the rubric? Yes, it does come into play. And like Sarah said, it can make or break the application. I mean, we've seen where, you can literally see that they've sent a letter where it's just a paragraph and it's not even formatted correctly. And so that to me isn't really, I mean, you might as well not have sent it in, right? So if you prepare one, that's very helpful. And if you are an AFP member, that's nominating, that's extra credit. So right there, you can see that you're getting extra points for those things. And so if you're taking the time to create or, put together a nomination package, making sure that that's part of it is really critical. So you can do the mechanics, which is do the form, but making sure you include that letter is just really critical.
And then, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, okay. I was just gonna say that the other thing is again with vagueness. We've often seen where people will submit vague letters about, oh, this person is wonderful. They deserve this award because they're such a great philanthropist in town and have made a huge impact. That's not helpful for us. We need specifics. Anytime you can be specific about a specific story, organizations, but if you can name the various organizations that this person has helped support, or this organization or company, anytime we have specifics on numbers of people impacted or a specific story or time that they made a difference, that is truly what makes a strong letter versus one that's completely
Right.
weak and just doesn't help.
Right. So I mean, in my mind, ideally it would be the quantification through the nomination portion and the qualification through the letter. It's okay for that to be touchy-feely, but to show some sort of impact. But the more that you can support that impact is happening, the better. And if that's naming names, that's okay. Because sometimes it doesn't translate to money monetarily. But yes, so quantitative and qualitative components are essential.
Great. And then also, I know there is a deadline. Is there ever an extension of that deadline?
Sarah said no.
So the reason being is we really want to make sure that we can announce our nominees and build up momentum and excitement around this event. And that's not just for AFP, right? It's for all our organizations that are participating. And for the nominees themselves. We want them to be celebrated in a way that's meaningful. We want them to be honored in the right way. So no, there will not be extensions. We have a hard deadline of May 15th. So you'll see on the next slide. We're going to make the applications available next Friday, February 27th. So you'll have this great webinar to reference back to anytime you want. You'll have our nominations packet, which lists the eligibility and exactly what you need. And I'm going to share it as well. Julie has put together this incredible Be Gallant nominations checklist. So this is something that we'll be sharing with you all via email afterwards. And really, if you check off everything on this list, you will be good to go. You have a really strong application. And I hope that your nominee wins because if you do all these things, gallants deserve to be celebrated.
This is great.
Any anything, Julie, that you wanted to mention about the checklist? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Julie.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think this summarizes a lot of what we went through during the webinar, and it shows things that you could, I think a lot of people approach this as if they were doing submitting or preparing a grant. Um, so I just try to put that together so you would feel that you could go through this and that you would know that what you're preparing is compelling and competitive.
Yeah. So again, applications are available next Friday, February 27th. Deadline is May 15th, so you've got ample amount of time to start thinking about who would be your great nominees. Again, you can nominate in multiple categories, so please do consider that. One other thing to note is that if you have submitted an application in the past, we would love to reconsider that nomination if they did not win in a previous year, but you really feel like they have still made such a tremendous impact on your organization. So we will be emailing folks that have submitted their nominations in the past and asking them if they would like to resubmit and update your nominees packet. If they've added any additional impact to your organization or across the community. But that's also an easy thing to do. If you've already made this nomination in the past and they were truly a strong applicant, why not consider nominating them again this year? Because we would love to look at them and consider them for 2026.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's probably things that can be updated in the meantime.
Exactly. Okay. Any other questions before we sign off and wish everybody a great, great day?
Thank you so much for all your help and support. I think this will really make the process a lot easier.
Awesome.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Okay, so stay tuned for the recording, the checklist, and the nominations application that we will be sending your way after this webinar. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
All right.